does than everybody else. And, you know, it starts the day after Thanksgiving. When I was growing up, my Poppy, my grandfather, my mom's mom, and my dad and I would go down into the basement in our apartment in Chicago on the west side and haul out all the Christmas stuff. And we'd set up the nativity set and start laying out my train set and get ready for the Christmas tree. And we did that. So my nativity set is up, our lights are out front. And one of the things that several years ago, you know that movie, I think it's the Christmas Story, where the kid that wants the Red Ryder rifle, whatever they want. Several years ago, Margie brought me a Red Ryder rifle. So now every year I pull that out and I put it in back of the Christmas tree because this rifle was kind of like hidden in the corner. So I'm set up and I'm ready for my Christmas thing. And you know, this idea about returning to that kid within. When I was in ministerial school, several of my classmates began using stories from kid stories, and one of them was Dr. Seuss. And there's a Dr. Seuss story that's, it's called, Oh, the Places You'll Go. Oh, the Places You'll Go. And Dr. Seuss has 4 verses that kind of really resonate with me as I start this talk here. And it says, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself wherever you choose. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself wherever you choose. And, you know, putting on my little ministerial hat or a Unity Truth student, he's talking about 4 basic principles in our lives. You know, we have the power of thought, which is one of our Unity principles, the need for action, which is also one of our Unity principles, the power of choice, and that there's no limits. The talk I'll be reading of Mr. Fillmore this coming week, now Charles talks about we're unlimited in spirit. And we're the only one who can put those limits on. If we think limiting thoughts, we're going to be limited in what happens in our life. And it's interesting, if you read today's third Sunday in our little booklet here, Reverend Teresa Burton, who's the editor and was also one of my SEE students, talks about the very last line of it. It says, we can choose love. We can choose love. And I think Marcia touched on that too. You know, somebody riding your bumper with their brights on, yeah, a little hard to choose love on that, but we can do that, you know. And I know when I'm on the freeway and highway driving, things are getting a little hectic, I'll use the affirmation, I behold the Christ. I behold the Christ. That helps me get along in traffic there, because that other person's got the Christ spirit in them just as much as I do. One of the other one of the other kid-like things that come to mind is there's a quote from Mary Ann Williamson in a book that she's called A Velveteen Rabbit. Now, some years ago, I was interested in spiritual things, and I was reading a book by William James called The Varieties of Religious Experience. The Varieties of Religious Experience. And he uses part of the story of the Velveteen Rabbit to kind of speak to this, all the stuff can happen to us as we're moving along our spiritual path. And here is that section that he quoted, and I'll read it to you. That's about what is real. What is real? Asked the rabbit one day when they were laying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came into the room. Does it mean having things inside you and a stick-out handle? Real isn't how you're made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really love you, then you become real. It doesn't happen at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily, or have sharp edges, or have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose and shabby in the joints, and very shabby in your skin. But these things don't matter at all, because once you're real, you can't be ugly, except to the people who don't understand. Except to the people who don't understand. You know, I pull that out and I have a little devotional book that I read from, and I have that taped into the back of it about what is real. And I think about that time that I was found this in my life. I had a Zodiac Seawolf watch. I was on active duty in the Coast Guard. I was a seaman apprentice. I was married. I was making like $110 a month. Thank goodness my wife was working for Westinghouse, otherwise we wouldn't eat. But we were at the Fort Meade base exchange at the Army base in Fort Meade, Maryland. And there was this watch that caught my attention. It was a Zodiac Seawolf watch. It's self-winding. And I wanted it. You know, as a present, my former spouse says, well, put it on layaway. So every month when we go to do our monthly shopping, I put another few bucks on it. It was $55. And remember, I'm making 110 a month. So I finally got it. And boy, it was my pride and joy. And it was a Zodiac Seawolf scuba watch, self-winding, and it had a black face with an orange ring around it. Now, the guys that I was stationed with, they loved to make fun of it. They called it Brach's Halloween watch. But it was my pride and joy. And one time I was working on our car, doing something, and I should have taken the watch off, but I didn't. And I scratched the crystal. I went, oh no. Because at that time, I thought for everything to be good, it had to be perfect. It had to be unscratched, unmarked, and whatever. And I was reading this and I said, wow, this is a real watch. Because I look at that scratch, I remember working on this car in the parking lot in Glen Burnie, Maryland. And I remember working on cars in Chicago, Illinois in the middle of the winter, freezing my fingers off. But that was my watch. And throughout my Coast Guard career, it accompanied me. When I was on the ship out in the North Atlantic, I would pass the time by making the note of what they call watch error. You keep track of the number of seconds or whatever that your watch loses each day. And if you have to do a celestial sight, you can use your time, your watch error and the Greenwich Mean Time and compute this thing. That's providing you have a sextant and a chart and some tables. But anyway, now they probably have something on your smartphone that can convert it right away. But it's important to know how to do these celestial things. When I was issuing licenses to merchant mariners, they say, how come I have to know how to do the celestial navigation? I can get on my phone here and it gives me my GPS coordinates right down to 50 meters. I said, well, guess what? Those satellites can be knocked offline and then you need to know how to figure out where you are. So anyway, I would do that when I was on the ship. And when I was back in Boston, I go over at noontime and swim at the Armed Forces YMCA. And I was wearing my watch and I'd swim. Then we'd go in the sauna and we'd swim and go in the sauna. I came back to my office one day and my watch is half full of water. But oh my God, well, it's a little more than real now because it's not working. At least it's right twice a day, right? So anyway, I needed to get it fixed. And there's one person in the entire United States who fixes Zodiac Seawolf watches. He's lived in Florida. So I sent it off to him. Well, it didn't come. Then I got a notice. He died. And it was about a year later, I got my Zodiac Seawolf watch back. And by that time, the orange had kind of faded, I think, from the chlorine water. And the second hand was kind of missing a part at the end. And it really wasn't the same. So I think I let it go to watch heaven. But when we have something like that watch, I can remember all the good times. And now I even have a better watch. This watch is over 20 years old. Margie got it to me when we were dating. I had wanted a watch with a yellow face. And she went to Unity Village. And I think when she was down in Kansas City, that shopping area, she picked up this watch. It's a Luminex watch. It's a Navy SEAL watch, waterproof to 660 feet. If I had it on me, even though my body be crushed like an eggshell, this thing would be keeping time. So, I've had a lot of good memories from this. And in fact, it's over 20 years old because next month on January 6th, Margie and I will be celebrating 20 years of wedding bliss. So next month, I'm going to miss you guys because we're going to be in Hawaii, on Kauai, for our from the 4th to the 14th. So Margie will be with you, but on the second Sunday, I'm going to be in Hawaii. But I'll be thinking of you. Florence Scovill Shinn, in her book, The Game of Life and How to Play It. And Florence was a New Thought writer who self-published her own book. And this was way before the internet, way before the Amazon self-publishing things that you can get. And she self-published this book, The Game of Life and How to Play It. And on page 59 of that, in a chapter called The World of the Wondrous, which is kind of unique, she had written this: love is the cosmic phenomenon and opens to man the fourth dimensional world. Love is the cosmic phenomenon and opens to man the fourth dimensional world. Wow. Wondrous, the world of the wondrous. And I was reflecting on that this morning. I think, isn't there a Christmas carol about something? And what to my wondrous eyes should appear but a tiny sleigh, yeah, and 8 tiny reindeer. Well, wondrous means so good or admirable as to inspire wonder or awe. So good or admirable to inspire wonder or awe. So that's what, when you sing that little Christmas thing, wondrous eyes, that's what they are. And, she mentions about this thing called the fourth dimension. And Rinde, here comes your answer about why is that in the title? Well, the fourth dimension is one thing that Mr. Fillmore talks about a lot in these different talks that I read. And if we want a real, like a unity definition of the fourth dimension, check out our Revealing Word. That's our book that has the definition of various metaphysical meaning of these various terms. And the Revealing Word says this: fourth dimension, a transcendent realm that Jesus called the kingdom of the heavens. Here one can discern the trend of spiritual forces and see with spiritual vision of the Christ mind. The fourth dimension, which embraces and encompasses the other 3 dimensions, is also realization, the doing away with time and space and all conditions. So it's a spiritual dimension, and Jesus calls this the kingdom of the heavens. And some of the recovery literature talks about being rocketed into the fourth dimension, and it's where we can see with our spiritual vision. And I think as we get more and more connected to that Christ within, we get to see things a little differently in our life. I think it's important to have things that remind us of what the good that was happening in life, the love things. I had my zodiac watch. I have my watch from Margie. And this morning, as I'm fixing my breakfast, I turned on the kettle for the teapot, and I said, honey, didn't we get this teapot from the Napa table at the bottom of the Grange? She said, oh yeah, I picked it up there. So every morning when I kick my tea or boil my water for my instant coffee, I get to think of you guys because we have the teapot from your center there. So thanks for doing that. And it's important to keep things through time of trouble, keeping these happy memories, these love memories alive. Viktor Frankl, when he was in a concentration camp during the Holocaust, kept himself alive by thinking of all the wonderful memories that he had. And there's also a story about a Navy pilot who was shot down in Vietnam and captured as a prisoner of war. This guy loved golf. So as he was trapped in a little tiger cage, he would mentally play golf at these various Navy golf courses that he had played at. And he would kind of imagine himself, teeing the ball up, hitting it, and playing every shot all the way through the golf course. And interestingly, when he got released and got back to the States here and he started playing his golf game, he wasn't too far off his handicap because he had mentally done it. And the mind doesn't really know between mentally doing practice and physically doing practice. If we look in our New Testament on the letter of 1 John, the writer of that says, if we love one another, God lives in us and God's love is perfect in us. If we love one another, God's love is in us and God's love is perfected in us. So love, what is this thing called love? I think one of my other talks, I talked about the Greek definitions of that they have for love. But we only have this one love word in our English language. And so what's the opposite of love? And I came upon this. It says love, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. Indifference, to tune out to the plight of others, indifferent to world. There was this one fellow who came to a hospital. He wanted to see his day-old baby. And the nurse, the charge nurse was there, says, hey, it's before visiting hours, you can't go in. And he says, well, I brought some things that my wife wants to see. And so she took his newspaper, she took his magazines, she took the radio, and she's getting ready to turn and walk away. And he says to her, but my wife wanted to see me too. So he broke through her indifference and he was able to visit his wife and his one-day-old baby. You know, love is like the wind. We can't see it, but we sure can feel it. And I think love flickered in that nurse, and she saw the plight of her this new husband with a day-old baby, and let him in, even beyond the visiting hours. I think the adage of, you know, we need people. And I think this applies to other creatures as well. There was a story about tadpoles. And apparently, if you cut off the tail of a tadpole, it can regenerate. And they did a little experiments, and they found that if they cut off the tail of a tadpole and left it all by itself, or they put it back in with a group of other tadpoles, it regenerated 300% faster when it was with a group of tadpoles than it was without. They also did a study with mice, feeding a solitary mouse and a group of mice on the same diet. The group and a group of mice grew 10 times faster from the same exact diet. So I think not only people need people, but other creatures need other creatures around them of like mate. I think I, or maybe you too, grew up with the message of as we become mature, we become more independent. We can get out of our parents' house and take care of ourselves and do stuff. And, you know, there's this movie called Lone Wolf McQuade for Chuck Norris plays this Texas Ranger, and he's always by himself. And boy, he does all this stuff by himself. But at the end of the movie, he ends up having to buy people around him to finally capture these bad guys. But, you know, I like to think of myself as Lone Wolf McQuade at times. And I remember I was stationed in Chicago. I was living in this Navy base up in Great Lakes, Illinois. And I thought, I'm going to go up to Wisconsin. And I'm going to camp all by myself. It was kind of like towards the end of the season. And this good friend of mine says, Bob, I somehow don't see you as a camper. You've never really talked about that. And I said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to commune with nature. I'm going to be out there connecting with spirit. Well, I drove up in my 74 Chevelle, packed all my gear in the trunk in the back seat, found this little camping place in Wisconsin, set up my tent, cooked my dinner, and I'm sitting there, and then it started getting dark. And I'm thinking, this is not fun. It's kind of lonely out here. So I packed up everything, threw it in the car, and drove back home. And I was taking some leave. That's the military equivalent of vacation. So I spent the rest of my leave just kind of being with people around the base area there, connecting with people. So, you know, sure, I want to express myself as an individual, but I want to do it with people and stay that connected. You know, sometimes in our married life, we can kind of slip away from stuff. There's a story about an old mature couple. They're sitting there, and the gal looks over, and there's this young gal just all snuggled next to this guy in the next car. And she says, "Oh, isn't that cute? Just remember when we were snuggling like that?" And he kind of grunted, and I just, wow, what happened? And he says, "Well, I haven't moved." So, and I think imperceptibly we can slide apart, and that could be the guy sitting over there as well as the gal. In our relationships, we kind of tend to drift apart doing little things and kind of maybe take each other for granted. But I think Christmas time is time to be thinking about love and coming back together in relationships. Admiral Byrd spent about 5 months in solitude in the South Pole as part of this scientific adventure. And he had some wonderful insights of science and stuff like that. But at the end, he came to the conclusion, there are only two things that matter to a human, only two things that matter to a human. They are affection and love, affection and love. And he is quoted as saying, if he had a do-over, he said, "I wish I could love more and have more affection for humankind. I wish I could love more and have more affection for humankind." So, you know, as we go through life, you know, think about this. You know, maybe we don't want to get to the end of our life and regret that we didn't do something. And that's probably the saddest thing. And I remember when I was going to be buying this horse, you know, I'm on active duty. The government does not pay to move a horse if I got transferred. And I wanted to have my own horse. And this friend of mine had this thoroughbred gelding, and I ended up buying it. And some of my friends are saying, "Well, what do you do if you get transferred?" And I said, "Well, I'll sell the horse or I'll give it away." But, you know, I thought, you know, I do not want to be laying on my deathbed saying, "Why didn't I buy that horse when I was in California?" And as it turned out, that horse led me to my second spouse, and it led me to have a horse ranch in Modesto, and it led me to my Margie. It led me to going to Unity School to become a minister, and led me to you guys. So all these little things that we take and say, well, take that step of faith and get stuff that you want. There's a fellow named Nicholas Sparks who wrote this. It was a book called The Notebook, and it was also made into a movie. And he's quoted as saying this: "I am nothing special. Of this I am sure. I'm a common man with common thoughts, and I've led a common life. There are no monuments dedicated to me, and my name will soon be forgotten. But I have loved another with all my heart and soul, and to me, this has always been enough." I think loving another person with all your heart and soul is just enough. Barbara Seistander thinks people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. I know, keep your day job, Bob, don't sing. No, leave that to Renee and Lon. Yeah, ministerial school that asked me to sing Far, Far Away and not the song anyhow. But, I think as we move through our life and look at the relationships, our relationships need TLC. TLC. T is the trust. To have a relationship is honesty. We need to have honesty in our relationship, so we know what's happening and what people say and do what they're going to say. And it's the foundation of our communication, of relating to one another. TL, love, lovingness. Love is actually a verb. It needs to be continually put into action. When I was taking horse lessons or horse training lessons, this trainer would just say horsemanship. Horse man ship, horse and a man traveling together. So think about relationship, two people traveling together in life. So we need to continually look at our relationships, and also maybe look at them as a bank account. Margie made a big deposit in our checking account the other day, and now we have some extra money that came into our stuff. So, staying investing in our relationships, so we have the things to draw on when we in time of need. And then C, TLC, communication. Wow. I think it's important that we not only talk to one another, but we also pray together. In Unity, we talk about affirmative positive prayer. Praying in a relationship is not, oh God, let him or her see the error of her ways and see it outside, supposed to be doing it. No, think more like the lines of, say, St. Francis' prayer. Lord, make me an instrument of truth, an instrument of peace. Where there's love, love, let me sow love, And if you want to Google the prayer of St. Francis, you can get the whole thing of that. But, it's talking about making me that instrument that I want to be. And also, communication needs to be soft. There's an old saying, for a happy relationship, never speak louder to one another unless the house is on fire. Never speak loudly to one another unless the house is on fire. Mark Twain also said about being kind, important about being kind. He said, kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. The deaf can hear and the blind can see. So as we move forward into this thinking about relationships, and take a look at the story about the shepherd who has the 99. He has the 99 sheep, and he goes and chases off on the one to bring it back. Sometimes in our relationships, we leave the 99 things that we do good, and we chase after and remember the one thing that's kind of loose out there. Oh my God, the cap is off the toothpaste again. The socks are on the floor. There's goof in the sink. The door's not locked. Forget about those things that are out there and focus on the 99 as we move through our Christmas thing. So there's people who need people are the luckiest people in the world, according to Barbara Streisand. But also Peanuts cartoon, Charlie Brown said, I love humankind. It's people I can't stand. So, if we love humankind, we may have a little thing with people, but people are human just like us. And I think that's what we can step forward in this. And there's 3 ways that we can step forward in our relationships in this holiday season. Know, grow, and show. Get to know one another, communicate, talk to one another, and listen. I remember in ministerial school, we had this minister would come up and kind of like for counseling, and this gal gave me undivided listening attention for a half hour. And it was like, oh my God, I mean, I've never felt that before in my life. And it was kind of unnerving at first, but she was there physically present and mentally present and emotionally present for me for a half hour as we talked about stuff. So listen to that one. A lot of times we listen, but we're thinking about what we're going to say next. So listen attentively what we're going to say, our partners are saying to us. Know, grow. Realize that through us, we're not going to lose part of us, we're going to gain part of us. And our partner's going to be even sweeter, our relationship's even going to be sweeter as we get to grow with one another. And finally, show. That all of our actions represent stuff that we are showing love. Whatever it is, how small it is, how big it is, show love. And one of the things Margie wanted for Christmas was the Sunday New York Times. Well, guess what? It showed up. It took 2 weeks, but I finally had to raise up enough heck that they started delivery. But I laid it on the table this morning with a little Merry Christmas on it. She was so elated about having the Sunday New York Times. Man, it is thick paper. And we can read it through the rest of the week here. But there's some great stuff in there. But that's what she wanted. She mentioned that, and out of the blue, I got her for. So as we move through this week of Advent with the thing of love, this wondrous world of love, think about that gift of love. And what Florence Scovill Shinn had said, love is the cosmic phenomenon that opens to man the fourth dimensional world, opens to that spiritual world. And the very ending of that Dr. Seuss poem is this: you're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountains are waiting. Get on your way. You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so go on your way. Wow. All right, dear ones, let's move on our way into a period of meditative reflection. And I invite you to sit comfortably on your seat. You can let your gaze be softly forward, or you can close your eyes and just listen for a bit as I lead a little bit of a guided meditation. Bring our awareness to our breath and notice how we're breathing. Perhaps if we have been hurried around in our holiday season, we're breathing up in our chest area. Let's adjust our breathing so we do some belly breathing. Follow that next breath down through our nose, down through our trachea, past our lungs, all the way down into our belly. And if we want, we can place our hand gently on our stomach and feel our stomach move out. And as we exhale, feel our stomach move towards our backbone. Belly breathing is a wonderful, relaxing tool. I tell my yoga students that. So as we're moving through the holiday season and there's some hustle and bustle and activity and we're getting a little worried about life, find yourself a quiet place and do some belly breathing. And follow our next breath down to our heart center and let our attention stay on our heart center, right in the center of our chest. Our heart, that wonderful physical organ that represents love in our culture, and that physical organ that sends blood to every part of our body temple and takes back waste products to our lungs, and we release them but no longer serving our greatest good. So if there's any part of our body temple that needs that healing hand of spirit, imagine love-filled, spirit-filled blood flowing from our heart center to that part of our body temple that needs that healing hand of spirit, bathing it in a blue-white light bubble of healing spiritual energy. And if there's any person, place, thing, or event in our lives that need that healing hand of spirit, I invite you to see that person, that place, that thing, that event, bathed in a blue-white light bubble of healing spiritual energy, bringing about the right and perfect solution at the right and perfect time, and in a right and perfect way. And now bringing our attention back to our heart center, let our attention be focused on our heart now. Jesus of Nazareth, when asked by his disciples, saying, Lord, teach us how to pray, he told them to go within to the closet of their being, to shut the door to the outside world, and your Father, which hears in secret, speaks in a small, still voice, but rewards openly. So we have gone to the closet of our being, our heart center. We mentally shut the door to the outside world, and we rest in the silence and listen for that small, still voice, or perhaps thoughts flitting across our mind, or images scrolling across the screen of our mind as we gently rest in the silence. And I'll ring the gong 3 times, and we'll enter into a period of silence. And now, allowing that attention, we've been focusing on our heart center to expand to our entire body. Become aware of the pressure of our feet on the floor, the presence of our feet in our shoes, the pressure of our body against the chair where we're sitting, and the temperature of the air on our exposed skin. And perhaps in our time of silence there, we heard something like a small, still voice, or images flitting across the screen of our mind, or thoughts floating through our mind, or perhaps not. But we have made ourselves open and available to Spirit. Perhaps later today, in a movie we're watching, a book we're reading, a song we're singing, a Christmas tune that comes on the radio, will bring forth something from Spirit of where we're going to go. And this week, as we read through our A Christmas to Remember book, if we're reading that for the Advent thing, as we're reading about love, some thoughts about connecting to people with relationships in the past. And now we gently open our eyes and we listen to Lon with some wonderful Alleluias.